Have you ever wondered how to get that perfectly flat belly instead of dealing with that annoying lower belly pouch? Or how to easily turn your ruler-built body shape into the perfect hourglass with a tiny waist and round glutes? Yeah. Those are not my words. It's just what I found on social when I was searching on how to get the perfect physique. If you've ever tried a 30-day booty building smoothie detox cleanse or any random social media workout claiming to get rid of that stubborn belly fat and you thought, why am I not seeing results? Because that is exactly how I started. I remember doing the 14-day challenges that went viral on Tumblr. I did them in my room. I saved my money to buy a small barbell and I would put plates on it to get some extra resistance. And I was just doing squats upon squats upon squats. And then we had the thigh gap challenge. I remember that one as well. I've tried it all and nothing seemed to work. So then what happens is usually you dive into this rabbit hole and then there are so many contradicting claims of this exercise will help you get rid of fat in this area and this is the only exercise you need to be doing, or these are some things that you absolutely cannot eat, or maybe you aren't eating enough so that's why you're not seeing results, and then we're not even talking about the meal timing. There is just so much noise. What if getting fit, losing fat, building muscle and getting healthy felt simple? Because here is the truth. Progress comes from a handful of timeless principles and not from jumping on viral challenges backed by everything and everyone but science. So over the next few minutes, we are going to ignore all the noise and we're going to focus on the only tools that you'll actually need. We'll cover foundational training principles. I'm going to do a nutrition 101 and I want to discuss some key lifestyle factors that glue everything together. This is the actual ultimate guide to getting your dream physique, reaching your goals and taking control of your health. By the way, hi, I'm Sophie. I started Gains by Brains almost a decade ago, which I cannot believe, and I helped a lot of women transform their fitness. My credentials, good question. I got a bachelor in economics and finance. I got my master's in marketing management and marketing intelligence, and the relevance of that is not a lot. But one, I paid a lot of money to get those degrees, so I at least want to mention them. And number two, during my master specifically, I learned to read research papers. Now that skill is kind of relevant. During my master, I got my personal training certificate at the International Sports Sciences Association, which I then renewed at the Carroll Performance Institute. And currently, I'm getting my PT renewed again at the Henselmans Coaching. So what does that mean? It means that I know that I don't know everything. And therefore, I always try to focus on the basics that stood the test of time. Quick warning, this will be a long video because we have a lot to talk about. And if you want to read what I'll cover in this video, then I've created a free guide. Because personally, I've always learned the best when I can read something and listen to it simultaneously. So if you want to go ahead and download it, I'll leave the link in the description box down below. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into the training principles and the nutrition part, I want to explain how muscle is built and how body fat is lost. Because most people, when they think muscle, they think shredded abs or an insanely developed back, or that might just be me. But on a practical level, muscle is high-performance tissue that helps you to move, but it also protects your joints. At a microscopic level, muscle fibers behave like those tiny rubber bands. If you put them under enough tension, under enough mechanical tension, which means that you actually lift something with intent, little micro tears will form. But don't be alarmed, because your body treats those little micro tears as an upgrade alert. proteins that you consume through your diet, they will go to the tissue, repair the fibers, and then here is the upgrade. They'll add a tiny extra layer so that the same weight feels a little bit easier next time. And that process is called adaptation, which is the key. It is why we get stronger or more developed rather than staying stuck at day one forever. So, in summary, muscle building 101. We want to apply meaningful tension. We need to recover, adapt, and then repeat. And that is muscle building in one sentence. Fat loss is even simpler. Step 1 is to find your maintenance level calories. You can use calculators to get a rough idea of what this could be, but better is to eat normally, track what you're eating for 10 to 14 days, weigh yourself daily, and then use weekly averages. If your weight is flat, then that intake was approximately your maintenance level calories. Next step is to create a small and steady deficit, not a crash diet. For most women, there would be around 10 to 15%. Now there are 3 dials and you can pick what suits you and what suits your lifestyle best. Number 1 would be to eat a little less. This is when you create that calorie deficit by keeping your expenditure the same, but by decreasing your intake. Always make sure to keep your protein up, which is around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and don't neglect your fat intake because fats are important for your hormones. It's not that because we want to lose fat, that we stop eating fat. Fats are key. We want to use volume eating so that you stay full because a mountain of strawberries fills you up a lot nicer than a small cookie will. We build our plates with lean protein, high water, and high fiber foods. And then what I always try to practice is to not be on your phone while eating so you have a very mindful experience and you stop eating when you are around 70 to 80% full. So that was if you want to create a deficit by focusing on solely eating less. We can also do the same, but then with moving more. So this is when you keep your intake exactly the same as you did at maintenance, but then you increase your expenditure in order to create that deficit. So for example, you can check what your average steps are or were in the last 2 weeks, and then significantly increase them. For example, by 2K steps a day. You can also add in some low intensity steady state cardio on top of whatever you were already doing. And I would save the more high intensity sessions later down the road if you ever need it, or maybe if you're plateauing. And then the third way of creating a deficit is my personal favorite, and that is a combination of both. So this is when you increase your expenditure while you're decreasing your intake, but just slightly. So we're not creating a bigger deficit than we did with the other 2 dials. We're not crash dieting. We're still sticking to that intended deficit, but we're just using both ways simultaneously. Regardless of how you want to create that deficit, there are a couple things that you need to pay attention to. Number 1 is your sleep, because short sleep increases hunger and stress hormones, which makes everything harder. Aim for 7 to 9 hours if you can. Make sure that you track without spiraling. So if you weigh yourself daily, then use weekly averages. We don't want to make any judgments based on our daily weigh-ins, as your weight depends on a variety of factors, not just your body fat. You can also take photos every 2 weeks. You can take your measurements. You can keep track of how you are feeling. There are so many ways of keeping track of progress, but just make sure that you don't make any judgments based on a single data point. If progress stalls for 14 plus days and you were on point with absolutely everything, then I still want you to audit the basics, because sometimes we have hidden bites or sips of things. Are there steps that we actually hit, or maybe your watch is off? Check first. And then you can add some steps, you can add some minutes to your cardio sessions, and then if it's still flat, if your weigh-in is still the same, then you can reduce your calorie intake with, for example, 100 calories a day. As always, slow and steady wins the race. We're not crash dieting here. If you are feeling run down, then take a 7-day diet break at maintenance and then you can resume after. The reason why your fat loss can slow or your weight loss can slow is because a smaller body means that you burn fewer calories and that your need drops without you actually even noticing. So the need is the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the energy expended for everything that we do that is not sleeping, eating, or sport-related activities like exercising. That's why I personally really appreciate using daily steps, because what happens personally is I'm in a deficit and then I unintentionally slow down, which means that my need is dropping and then my intended deficit is no longer that 10%, but it's actually maybe 5 or maybe even 0 because I slowed down so much. And then I think I'm in a deficit, but I'm not actually in a deficit anymore. So having a daily step can really help. And then some red flags that your deficit is too aggressive. Number 1 is that your strength goes down. Your workouts are just nosediving. You are freezing or your sleep tanks. If that is the case, then shrink the deficit or hold a week at maintenance. So let's go over 4 muscle building and fat loss myths that I now hopefully am able to once and for all silence the noise on. And that is number 1, soreness equals growth. Not necessarily. Soreness equals inflammation, not necessarily progress. Because when I hit you with a hockey stick, you will be sore, but not necessarily more muscular. Lift heavy weights and you will be bulky. Muscle growth is slow, calorie dependent, and also testosterone limited. So it takes a lot of effort, a lot of progressive overload, a lot of adaptation in order to build muscle. So you will not wake up looking like Mr. Olympia. Crash diets are efficient. They are efficient at shrinking your muscle mass, slowing down your metabolism, and also making sure that you boomerang the weight back. That is not what we do here. Do this exercise to get rid of lower belly fat. No, spot reduction is not a thing. In order to lose fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. Your body will then determine where your fat will be lost first and where your fat will be lost last. Okay, so let's continue with the 6 timeless principles when it comes to training in general. Think of these as the laws of physics of training. You can debate whether you think that Pilates is better than weightlifting, classes are better than solo sessions, or training with kettlebells are more favorable over training with machines. All is fine. However, you cannot break any of these laws without paying a price, and that price usually means no more progress. Number 1. This one is simple. You get better at what you actually practice. Makes sense, right? The closer that your training looks to the result that you want, the faster you'll get it. If you want to hike hills without having any knee pain, then train knee dominant patterns, like maybe a squat variation or a step up or a lunge. And if you want to grow your glutes, then you want to load hip hinges, for example, your Romanian deadlifts and your hip thrusts. But if your goal is a first pull-up, then rowing can help, but nothing will beat actually practicing the pull-ups, assisted or banded, the movement pattern at least twice a week. It doesn't mean that you only have to do one exercise and then stick with it forever. However, it means that you pick 1 or 2 key moves that directly correlate to your goal. You want to place them first in the session whenever you are fresh, and then you want to focus on progressing on those exercises. Can be a rep, a kilogram of weight added, or a cleaner technique, and then everything else that you do will be supporting work. For example, we want to grow our glutes and we're planning to do a lower body session. So what we're going to do is we're going to do hip thrusts or RDLs first and second exercise, and then we do assisting work. So we do maybe a squat variation, maybe a lunge variation, some unilateral work, cable kickbacks, any accessory works, because this makes it specific, because you now have your 2 big hip dominant lifts before you do anything else, which will help you with supporting your glute growth goal. If you want to get your first ever pull-up on an upper body day, then you want to start your upper body day with assisted or banded pull-ups. You can even do negative pull-ups. We do them for a couple of sets. We focus on having slow eccentrics, and we're also in the lower rep range because we want to build our strength. And then we can do row variations after to support. The reason why this is specific is because you're now practicing the actual pattern in the strength range that you want to grow in. Use whatever you did as a benchmark for next session, and this is how you'll make progress over time. So some common mistakes that you can make is, for example, that you do everything But the thing, you want to put the goal first. Do it 2 or 3 times per week in some form and then get better at it. Another mistake would be that you just do random new things every single session. We want to keep that pattern stable for, let's say, 4 weeks at least. Now you can rotate variations, for example, going from a box squat into a front squat into a safety bar squat to keep the joints happy, to keep you happy, but you want to keep that pattern there if you want to progress on it. If you remember one thing of this section, it is that your body adapts to what you constantly ask it to do, so make sure that you ask with intention. Put the goal move first and then progress it on purpose. And then the rest that you do needs to support whatever your goal was in the first place. Number 2 is progressive overload. If you've seen any of my videos, you've probably seen me talk about this one before. It means that if you keep doing the exact same thing over and over again, there is no reason for your body to adapt. Progressive overload is a training principle where you gradually increase the demands that you place on your body during exercise so that your body needs to continue to adapt, and therefore you will continue to make progress and you'll avoid plateauing. There are multiple ways of progressively overloading. With load, meaning that we can add 1 or 2 kgs to the bar or with the dumbbells. We can have the same weight but we have more reps. We can add volume over time, within reason obviously. We can also do the same work in less time, which is where we shorten, for example, the rest slightly. We can have a better full range of motion movement. We can have a slower tempo. Whichever one you pick is absolutely fine, but just make sure that you focus on one lever at a time. Because if you manipulate multiple simultaneously, then you don't know for sure that you are progressively overloading. So if I do more reps, less weight, less rest, slower tempo, I have no idea what I have been doing, especially in 4 weeks from now if I keep changing everything up. So what does this look like in real life? Let's say that you are going to do 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps with 2 reps in reserve. Once you are able to do all the sets in the top range with good form, then you want to add some load next time, and then you want to rebuild at the low end. So for example, we start with 3 sets of 8 reps each. You slowly build to 9 reps for every single set, and then when you hit 3 times 10, you can add some extra weight. And now with the new weight, we're back at 3 sets of 8 reps again. Now let's talk about periodization really quick. Think of periodization as some sort of calendar for your overload, because you want to plan when to actually push, when to just kind of cruise, and then when to back off so that your adaptation stays ahead of the fatigue that you are accumulating. With periodization, we usually work on 3 time scales. So we have the macro cycle, which is your big goal, say 12 months, I want to grow my glutes. Then we have our mesocycles, which are our focus blocks for 4 weeks, let's say each, and then our microcycles, which is the week. You then waive your volume and intensity, for example, instead of maxing both at the same time, which means that in a 12-week program, we do 3 or 4 weeks of accumulating volume, we might have a deload, and then we have 3 or 4 weeks of intensifying things before we actually accumulate volume again, slightly higher than in our first cycle. But whether you use a linear build or an undulating, where we have the heavy, medium, and light sessions, the goal is always the same. Progress needs to feel like an escalator and not like a roller coaster. Number 3 is individuality, which means that 2 friends are doing the same program, and then 4 weeks from now, one of them is glowing, loving life, and then one of them is crippled. And that is because genes, sleep, stress, nutrition, even limb length, everything affects your recovery. So personally, what I like to do is a quick self-audit in the morning. What's my energy? How are my joints feeling? Which is especially relevant if you are 30 or older. How is your motivation feeling? What was your sleep quality? If you feel like you are in the green light, you slept well, your joints are fine, you are excited, train as planned. If you are yellow, maybe you are feeling fine, but you had poor sleep and you're stressed, and keep the first 2 exercises as planned, but maybe we want to trim a set on the other exercises, or we have a bit more rest, whatever is needed. But if you feel like you are redlining, or if you have joint pain, then usually I just reschedule. Or I do something else, light intensity, just get my body moving. Then number 4 is variation. And variation is a tricky one. Why? Because you want to avoid boredom because you want to stay consistent. However, training is a skill and you need repeated exposure in order to build that skill. Bottom line here is that you can have variation, you should have variation, but make sure that it is planned. An example rotation is to keep the key pattern the same and also position it where you programmed it the last cycle. So for example, you do back squats as a first exercise for week 1 through 4, then we transition into front squats, first exercise weeks 5 to 8, and then we do Smith machine pause squats in week 9 to 12. So now we have exercise variations, we have different grips, we have a different stance, different tempo, we have pauses, different range of motion, but the same pattern. And we're keeping it as the first exercise. Number 5 is fatigue management. Are you overtraining or are you under recovered? Because fatigue management means understanding how fatigue accumulates, recognizing the signs for your body, and then managing the impact on recovery and training. For example, by planning a deload week every 4th or 5th week. Deloads is where you cut the weekly volume by 30 or 40% and then reduce your loads by 5 to 10%. Or you just take a full week off, whatever suits you best. Don't need to do deloads, it depends, but just make sure that you stay ahead of fatigue. And then number 6 is adherence, because a flawless program that you cannot stick to is worthless. Consistency, consistency, consistency is key. So whatever you need to do in order to stay consistent, whether that is a different form of movement, maybe a suboptimal intensity, or even a suboptimal frequency, little movement is and will forever be better than no movement. So even if it's not enough to get a physical transformation right away, you'll still have the internal benefits that are relevant for your health. Okay, so now that we've covered these 6 timeless principles when it comes to training in general, I want to go over the 8 training variables. Think of these as your dashboard. If you master these, then you can write effective workout programs anywhere. Think hotel gym, limited equipment, maybe even a park bench, or for a no equipment, my baby naps for only 20 minutes, I don't have a lot of time to train. These are the 8 training variables that I'm going to cover. We have volume, we have rep ranges, intensity, frequency, rest, time under tension, exercise selection, and exercise order. Number 1, volume. For volume, you want to count hard sets per muscle per week within the usual training loads, which is around 30 or 90% of your 1 rep max. And with sets taken close to failure, set volume is the clearest driver of muscle growth. There are clear benefits for up to 10 sets, and then there are still gains that people can make in the 12 to 20 sets range. And then some people even benefit beyond that, but the returns will shrink and they become less certain the higher that you push your volume. You also don't want to push too many sets into one session. Programs doing more than 10 hard sets for the same muscle in a single workout tended to underperform. Spreading the work out across the week then wins. Number 2, rep ranges and intensity. For muscle growth, you don't need magic numbers. As long as you train close to failure, effective muscle building happens across a very wide range, again, about 30 to 90% of your 1 rep max, which will roughly be around 5 to 30 reps. For strength, you want to include regular heavier work, think 1 to 6 reps on your big lifts, and aim for at least 3 to 5 sets per week per key lift if strength is a priority for you. Instead of the % 1 rep max, you can also go with reps in reserve. I personally prefer using reps in reserve as I don't test 1 rep maxes as it has a high risk of injury. So if your goal is hypertrophy or muscle building, then finishing sets at 1 to 3 reps in reserve is key. For strength building, it's often 1 rep in reserve, and occasionally you can even test the true max singles, but this is just for advanced lifters. The last isolation set, however, when hypertrophy is your goal, can usually safely be taken to failure. isolation exercise. Number 4 is frequency. There is a per session ceiling, and frequency is your distribution tool. So most lifters will do great training a muscle 2 or even 3 times per week. And if you can, you want to schedule at least 1 weekly session per muscle for every 6 or so weekly sets that you plan on it. Hard sets. So if you are doing 12 hard sets for glutes, then aim to do them maybe at least twice, even 3 times per week if you want to push even higher volumes than that. Why? Because the extra freshness from a higher frequency usually produce more size and strength than if you want to pack that same work into 1 weekly session. Number 5 is rest intervals, and this one differs a lot per individual, but as a rule of thumb, it kind of depends on your rep ranges. So if you do any strength efforts, so the lower rep ranges, then have at least 2 to 3 minutes for a full recharge. With any hypertrophy work, you could do around 1 minute, maybe 1.5 until you feel recovered, and then for any finisher, so even higher reps than that, maybe 30 seconds to 45 will be enough for you to start your next set. Number 6 is time under tension. So generally speaking, I recorded a very long intro about how fast or how slow you should be lifting, but truth to be told is that it doesn't really matter that much. So as long as you're not going super fast and you're dropping everything and yourself included, and it's very harmful for your joints, and you're also not going super slow where it impacts how heavy you can lift significantly, it is up to you and how you prefer to train. Now, personally, I really like to lift very controlled because for me, one, it keeps my head in the game, because to me training is as much an art form as it is science. But also personally, I think that training in a controlled way helps me to make sure that my form stays in check. But when you're talking about actual effects on hypertrophy mainly, it really comes down to the individual. I like to indicate how slow or fast you should transition between different phases of the lift by using tempo. Tempo is indicated by 4 numbers or letters. So for example, a squat with a tempo 3-1-x-0 means that your eccentric should take 3 seconds. We stay at the bottom of the movement for 1 second, which is the second digit we're referring to, and then we go up as fast as we can, indicated by the X in position 3, and then immediately return into these 3 seconds eccentric again, because the 4th digit is 0. Time under tension is where the targeted muscle is under tension. So for greater hypertrophy gains, keep that tension on the muscle that you're targeting. So we want to go through the full effective range of motion. For example, with a dumbbell lateral raise, if I perform the lateral raise and I go all the way back down, there is no tension on my side delt anymore here. So if I return back to the top position right before I hit this point and I still have tension on my side delts, my time under tension will be greater. Number 7 is exercise selection. There is a 3-step test. Number 1, stimulus. Does the exercise actually load the targeted muscle through a big range? Number 2 is skill. Can you learn the movement in 1 or 2 sessions? And then number 3 is fit. Does this exercise suit you? Think limb length, mobility, equipment. It needs to work for you. There are some primary patterns that we always want to cover, not necessarily with every session though, but be mindful of them whenever you are selecting exercises. Then we sprinkle in some isolation work, for example, our flies, curls, lateral raises, hip abductions, for any weak links or physique detailing. Then resistance profile pairing is something that I want to mention quickly here too, which is, for example, the cable lateral raise, because the cable lateral raise keeps the tension top to bottom, and then we have a dumbbell lateral raise which peaks mid-range, and then alternate both across different phases. Number 8 is exercise order. Always prioritize the compound exercises. and exercises that you want to progress on early in the session. Start with them, use those to benchmark and then actually progress on, because you'll actually get better at those. Key takeaway is that the principles come first and then the variables second. Why? Because the principles are the rules of the game, and then the variables are your dashboard. Cardio isn't just a fat loss tool. Cardio trains your most important muscle, which is your heart. Because cardio means a lower resting heart rate, a steadier energy, it means faster recovery between sets, and yes, an easier way to create a deficit, as we discussed earlier. But that's only just part of the tool that cardio is. If you want to combine cardio and weightlifting, then usually we want to lift first and do cardio second. Kind of depends on your goal. Make sure that you match modality to your joints. So go on the bike if your knees are hurting. You want to progress like weights. So for example, add a couple of minutes, an interval or a weekly session to your cardio, but not all three at once. And in general, you want to start slow and train in heart rate zone 1 to 2, and do not increase your weekly volume with more than 10%. And also don't skip warm-ups or cool downs either for cardio. And then we also want to listen to recovery. So if your squats feel like cement, then trim cardio for 20% for the next week. Now, we already talked about training through the full range of motion, which can help with your flexibility and mobility. However, not everyone is there yet. So mobility and flexibility are often used interchangeably, but there is a difference. Mobility is the active control of a joint through its full range of motion, and flexibility is the ability of the muscles to passively stretch. So let me walk you through a quick daily mobility and flexibility flow that you can do first thing in the morning to wake your body up. Let's move through this full body mobility flow together to open up your joints, to warm your muscles, and to connect to your body at any point during the day or before training. You want to take your time, move with intention, and focus on quality over speed. So we're starting on our hands and knees in a tabletop position. Then inhale as you drop your belly, lift your chest, and gently arch your back into a cow. Exhale as you round your spine, tucking your chin and drawing your belly button in for cat. Keep all the movements slow and controlled. And then from a kneeling position, we're lowering down to our elbows. Place one hand behind your head, and as you exhale, open your chest by rotating that elbow up towards the ceiling. Find twist through your upper back, not your lower spine. And then as we inhale, we return to the starting position and then switch sides. Then for the next exercise, we are going into a push-up position, and then we're shifting our hips back towards our heels as if we're doing a pushback, and then drive forward into a strong push-up. Make sure that you keep your elbows close to your ribs. Inhale as you move back, and exhale as you press forward. Keep the movement slow and controlled, and flow with your breath. Now we're moving into a deep bodyweight squat. Sit with your hips down between your heels and bring your elbows to the inside of your knees. You can gently press your knees open with your elbows to stretch your hips a bit further, and then lift your hips up towards the ceiling, straightening your legs for a bit of a hamstring stretch. We're alternating between these two positions, hips low and hips high, and we're feeling both the hip opener and the hamstring stretch. And then from standing, you want to fold forward and grab either the back of your ankles or shins, or fold your arms together. Bending one knee while keeping the other leg straight, and then alternate sides, walking your legs like an elephant.
keep your head relaxed and focus on lengthening your hamstrings with every rep. Just let your upper body hang heavy. Take a seat on the floor and bring the soles of your feet together, letting your knees fall out to the sides. We want to sit tall and lengthen through the spine, and gently press your knees down towards the floor to open your hips if you want to. Breathe deeply and let each exhale help you to relax a little bit further into the stretch. If you want to, you can also take this time to gently stretch your neck. Step into a long lunge with your right foot forward and both hands inside your front foot. We want to drop the back knee if needed, and then rotate your chest towards your front leg, reaching your right arm towards the ceiling for a big thoracic twist. We want to return the hand down and then shift your hips back slightly for a hamstring stretch, and then we're switching sides. Move slow and feel every position, because this exercise really does live up to its name, which is the world's greatest stretch. Thank you so much for joining me. This flow opens the body, switches on your muscles, and resets your mind before training or at any point during the day. Use it as a warm-up, a recovery routine, or simply as a way to move and reconnect with your body. Take a deep breath in, and you're ready for the day.
Remember, we don't want to do static stretching before our workouts, but instead, dynamic moves are pre-lift, and then we do static holds after lifting or on rest days. Target what feels tight and then hold to mild discomfort, but never pain. Congratulations, you now know a lot about training. But abs are made in the kitchen, at least is what they always say. So let's dive into a quick nutrition 101. If there is one thing to remember when it comes to gaining or losing weight, as we said in the intro, it is calories in versus calories out. But it is a bit more nuanced than that, because the quality of those calories decide or determine how you feel, how you look, but also how you perform while you are chasing that deficit or that surplus. Or surplus, as I said in my first ever video. The 3 macronutrients are number 1, protein, which are the building blocks. Target is around 1.6 grams of protein per body weight in kilograms per day. Not every source of protein is absorbed the same, however, but sticking to this 1.6 gram will provide good results for most. Number 2 are the carbohydrates. We have our complex carbs, for example, some oats, some whole grain rice, potatoes, beans. They have fiber and give steady energy. And then we have simple carbs, for example, fruits, honey, white rice, which also serve a purpose, and they can be great around your workouts for quick energy. Then number 3, we have our dietary fats, which are also called the hormone helpers. Because fats support hormones, brain function, and the absorption of vitamins. So prioritize unsaturated fats, for example, olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado, and you also want to include omega-3s from good quality salmon or supplements. And then I want to do an honorable mention of micronutrients, the ones that provide color to your plate. You want to eat the rainbow, because even though the micros don't burn calories or build muscle directly, deficiencies are not great for your health or for your longevity. So prioritize them. Let's run you through some myths again. Carbs after 6 p.m. turn to fats. Your fat cells don't know time. Keto melts fat faster, only if you stay in a deficit. It is not magic. Sugar is toxic. Dose and context always matter. Detox teas cleanse you. Your liver and your kidneys already do that. So there's no need to get any detox teas. So now that you've got the training levers and the nutrition basics, I want to combine everything and show you 3 blueprints, full blueprints. 1 to lose body fat, 1 to recomp, and then 1 to build muscle. So let's start with the muscle building blueprint. We want to create a surplus of about maybe 2 or 3%. Personally, the cleaner that you keep your surplus and your bulk in general, the better it is. Why? You'll feel better, you'll look better, and you perform a lot better. Because imagine you can get a 150 calorie surplus by eating Skittles. You can also get it by eating, some extra olive oil and some potatoes. And then the effect that it has on your body is quite different. When it comes to training, this is the time to push yourself. Your body is in the perfect environment to grow. Progressive overload is your key indicator here. Make sure that you still do cardio for heart health, even though we're trying to create a deficit, and the same holds for your steps. Try to still be between 8 to 10k steps daily, sleep for 7+ hours minimum, because actual growth happens when you are horizontal and sleeping. And we also want to do, let's say, 5 minutes of breath work or meditation to work on your stress buffer. In terms of actual benchmarks, aim for 0.25 to 0.5 body weight that is gained per week, something like that, maybe a little bit less if you are further down in your bulk. Add 2 or 3 kg monthly to your key lifts and focus on increasing the measurements that you actually want to increase instead of just your weight ballooning. So if your weight gain is too rapid, then reduce it with 100 calories, your surplus. If it is too slow for 3 consecutive weeks, then add 100 calories per day to your target. Fat loss blueprint, we already discussed it a little bit during the intro, but deficit around maybe 15% below your maintenance. Protein is still at 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. Why? Muscle retention, and it helps to keep you full. You also want to maintain a healthy range of your fat intake, because this is again important for your hormones. And then personally, I stick to the 80-20% rule, which means 80% whole foods and then 20% of fun foods, just to keep me sane. So when it comes to training, what helps to build muscle in a gaining phase helps to prevent you from losing it in a deficit. And you want to try to hold around 90% of your pre-diet loads. If your strength drops too fast, then that might mean that your deficit is too steep. You can play around with the cardio, but you want to get your steps around 10k and then add additional cardio sessions if your fat loss stalls for 2+ weeks. Personally, I prefer doing more cardio rather than keep eating less, because it just makes me feel better, but whatever works here works for you. Again, daily steps are key, because you will unintentionally move less as your deficit increases. So therefore, having that step goal, just make sure that you keep your expenditure in check. Also, don't sleep less than 6 hours, because it will double your cravings, and make sure that you manage your stress, as cortisol drives hunger too. Hydration is key, it's always key, but especially when you're in a deficit, it often feels like you're hungry when you are actually thirsty. And reminder that your weight fluctuates a lot. So if you track it, then do it around the same time in the same conditions every single day, and work with your weekly averages. Measurements, looks, everything can add beneficial insights to just the numbers on the scale. So what about recomp? Recomp is where you eat at maintenance, still high protein, do the same lifting, and then beginners will here often build a little muscle and also burn a little fat. It's like recomposition magic. Unfortunately, it kind of fades as you get advanced. However, I've been through bulks, I've been through fat loss phases before, and I can tell you one thing: maintenance is a great position to be in, especially if you have a lot of things on your mind and fitness isn't necessarily your top 2. Maintenance just gives a lot more peace of mind. You can still make progress, you still have energy to do your cardio, feel fit, and to just handle life, don't underestimate the power of being at maintenance, because anything else will take up a lot of your energy. So we covered most except something very important, which are the lifestyle and recovery multipliers. You don't get better during the actual workout, you get better after it. Let's start with talking about sleep, because it is the cheapest recovery tool that exists. It's also my favorite one. So deep sleep is when your body goes into repair mode. This is more common in the first half of the night, because this is where you will get the big pulses of growth hormones, or GH, and this helps to build and protect muscle by boosting the repair processes and then reducing breakdown. If you have less deep sleep minutes, it means less GH pulses, which means less efficient muscle repair, which means lower net protein synthesis from your training. So less gains, less progress. Now, your REM sleep is more common in the second half of the night, and this is when your brain replays the skills that you practice. This is motor learning consolidation. The nervous system strengthens the movement patterns that you trained. For example, the squat path, the bar speed, the mind-muscle connection. And if you skip on REM, the patterns that you practice don't really lock in as well. Most deep sleep happens early in the night, REM sleep later. So if you go to bed late, then you cut your deep sleep. And then if you wake up too early, it chops off the REM. So a consistent 7 to 9 hours with a steady schedule helps to protect both. Make sure that your bedroom is cool, is dark, is quiet, and you are setting yourself up for success. Let's talk about stress management, because cortisol isn't evil, but chronically high cortisol is. Training is stress, but training is good stress. Doom scrolling is bad stress. So you want to try to get yourself out of fight or flight mode during the day by using little 5-minute resets to just help with draining your bucket. So the number one is, for example, box breathing, which is where you inhale, hold, exhale, and hold for 4 seconds each phase, and then repeat that 5 times. You can also go on a brisk walk, not being on your phone, or maybe do a little journaling session if you love to write something down, just something quick, something small. And then we also want to make sure that we perform mental health check-ins with ourselves, which is, for example, when we rate our mood, motivation, focus, 1 through 10, and if we're feeling under 6 for some consecutive days, plan lighter training week, nothing scheduled evening, whatever you can do, because self-compassion now beats burnout later. I think it's key to remember that we shouldn't neglect the impact of some small habits. Getting some morning sunlight in, even if it's just a couple of minutes, making sure that we actually stay hydrated, make sure that you drink enough water right as you're waking up, make sure that we have some posture breaks, that we stand up, that we maybe do some dynamic movements every once in a while, that we, keep our phone out of our bedroom, that we don't have late scrolling or early scrolling first thing in the morning. And then if you even want to take it one step further, then you can do maybe annual blood work, because they're just things that you don't know if you don't track them. We can track our resting heart rate, and if we have a week-long jump, then that can mean fatigue. As women, we can track our cycles, and then we notice how we're feeling along our cycle, and then we can schedule a deload if we know that we need to. Whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. The internet will always promise quick fixes and complex formulas, but real transformation comes from mastering the basics and doing them consistently. When you train with purpose, fuel your body with intention, and make recovery a priority, progress stops being a mystery and starts becoming inevitable. This video has given you the tools, but the results will always come from you. Lift with focus, eat with awareness, rest with purpose, and give it time. Your ultimate physique isn't built overnight. It's built through hundreds of small, deliberate choices repeated until they become your lifestyle.
If it would have been easy to get, it wouldn't have been worth anything. And what you'll discover once you reach your ultimate physique is that the real finish line was never about how your body looks. It's about who you became in the process. More disciplined, more confident, and more capable than you ever thought possible.
Thank you so much for spending these couple of minutes with me. Don't forget to grab the free downloadable guide in the description box down below. I hope you have an amazing day, and then I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.